Hey everybody, my name is Jen, the Caffeinated Crafter, and today we are going to do starting a full coverage piece. Shut up. Starting a full coverage piece on the diagonal / stitch with me. I don't know what I'm quite going to talk about besides stitching on the diagonal, but I figured this would be easier to just do it as a stitch with me and also show how I would start a full coverage piece on the diagonal. So the piece that we're going to do is Amazonia from the Cross Stitch Studio. Probably you might end up seeing the ring light from my light that I have here to give me a little bit extra light, but this is the piece that we're going to do. And I am doing this on a 25 count easy count Lugana, and I'm going to do, because it's 25 count, it's 25 count, right? Hang on. Yes, it's 25 count. Now with full coverage pieces, when it's 25 count, honestly, 25 and 28, I'm okay with doing 10 stitch. If I was doing it full cross, I would probably do one strand full cross. I would not recommend doing 25 count full cross with 2 strands of fabric. I really wouldn't. It gets too thick and too bulky. So if I want to use 2 strands of fabric, I'm going to use tent stitch, which is just a half cross. If I wanted to do a full cross, I would drop down to 1 strand. But I personally feel like I don't get the coverage I'm really looking for with 1 strand. Now, I normally would not try tent stitch with diagonal stitching because I typically will start in the upper left hand corner. However, I'm going to experiment with this one and also with Honeymoon Sunset, which you saw in a floss tube video if you're watching this right after I post it. And I'm going to start in the upper right hand corner. So real quick, an easy way, I know that this piece is big enough, but if you wanted to make sure, you could go to the edge of your fabric and listen, let me show you an easy way to make sure that you have 3 inches. It's nothing magical. It's a Post-it note. This is a standard size Post-it note. They are 3 inches square, 3 by 3. One moment while I grab my handy dandy tape measurer. Look, 3 by 3. So you don't need a ruler. If you want a 3-inch border and you have a standard size Post-it note, you can just put your little pack of Post-its up in the, I don't count the selvage, because this has a selvage on it. I do not count the selvage in the border. Now I'm using an easy count fabric because it's pre-gridded. The gray lines do wash out once you finish the piece and you wash it. But I just take my Post-it note and put it up into the corner. And then I don't do it exact. Like I'm not going to count from like part way in. I'm going to count the first full square that's kind of catty corner to that. So this piece is, let me double check. This piece is 400 wide by 490 high. Now I know it's plenty, so I'm just going to show you the width. So what I do when I'm trying to make sure that the piece is big enough is I find the first like square that's catty corner to that, right? And I go, because each square is 100, so 10 of these makes 100 wide. Hold on, back up for a second. Each one of these squares is 10 stitches wide by 10 stitches tall, making it 100 stitches square. So 10 of these is from left to right, 10, 20, 30, like every 10 is 100. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's 100. Make sure I stay in the camera here. So that's 100. 10, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 200. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 300. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 400. So the right hand side is going to be about here. I'm just going to grab a needle and just kind of, that way I know where, there we go. That way I know where the right hand corner of my piece is going to be. Now, for ease of filming, I think that I'm actually going to put this into a Q-snap, because I think it's just going to be a little easier to film. So let me do that real quick. If I was just stitching, I would probably keep this and keep stitching in hand, but to make this easier for filming, I'm going to put it into the Q-snap. Okay, and I think I'm going to do it like this. You can put a piece of felt over, like between your, you can't even see that. You can put a piece of felt between your fabric and your Q-snap frame. You don't have to. I don't. Sometimes what I like to do with the excess fabric, one thing I don't like about Q-snaps is it doesn't always hold the tension super tight, but I bet if I did what I'm telling you to and using felt, it probably would. But one thing that I will sometimes do when I was using Q-snaps on a regular basis is I will take the edge of the fabric, fold it over to kind of go around right here. This is the equivalent of putting a piece of felt on it. Just like that. And then that's the excess fabric from the left side. I could do that on the bottom as well and just pop this off real quick. Take the bottom of the fabric, like holding my leg out so you can see this. Just fold the edge over like that, pop that on. And having the extra fabric does actually help it stay a little bit tighter in the frame. And now you can't see my needle because it's up here. Let me do this real quick. So we're gonna stitch on the diagonal. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into my pattern. I'm not gonna show you the whole pattern, but you see this is with all the page breaks and everything. And then I have this in order from most amount of colors to at the top, which is a lot of 310, down to the least amount of colors at the very bottom. You could also flip it if you hit that button right there. You'd also flip it so that the most amount of colors is at the bottom and the least, let me get rid of that, is at the top. Now, if you want to add, so to change up a couple settings on here, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the little wheel, we're going to go into settings. And some people find it easier to stitch when it's on dark mode. If you tap that and you select dark, it'll turn it into dark mode, which does sometimes help the symbols show up a little bit better. Oh, look how cool that looks. Wow. Okay. All right, but I personally like it in light mode. So if we did that and we did this in light mode and I have my search color to be green, it doesn't look as cool. Okay, anyway, what I'm trying to show you is stitching on the diagonal. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I have my search color set as green. That's just my personal thing. And I'm going to be parking. I'm gonna do diagonal on the with parking. So I have my parking color set as blue. And I have my selection color, like when I actually like go to highlight my stitches, it's purple. That's just auto settings I did when I first started and I just got used to the colors, so I leave it. I don't need the page breaks, so I'm gonna hit that to switch it off. So now when you go into it, there's no page breaks on there. Page breaks, I don't need my center mark. Diagonal lines right here. You can have them going two different directions. You can have them going upper left to lower right, so going this way, or lower right to upper left going this way. If you're stitching from the left side of the piece going this way, if you're stitching from the upper left-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner, I had to think about this for a second, or the lower right-hand corner, then you're gonna want your diagonals going like this. So you would want them going lower left to upper right. So when I have my other full coverage pieces that I've shown in my other videos and they're on the diagonal and I start in the upper left-hand corner, that's how I have my diagonals set. But since this piece I'm gonna start in the upper right-hand corner because I'm experimenting, I want my diagonals going like this. So I want them going upper left to lower right. And you can do two different spacings. You can do 10 stitch wide or 20 stitch wide. I kind of like doing the 20 stitch wide because I find when they're 10 stitches wide and there's like, say, maybe a lot of confetti and you're like, you know, doing like little bits here and little bits here, I find that the diagonals get a little lumpy. So I'm gonna do 20 stitches wide on the diagonals. And then I have my color picked as red because out of the colors that I've looked at, the red stands out to me the most. And then shortcuts. Set shortcuts for double click on chart. When you double click, when you go into that in markup mode, if I double click on a single stitch, it gives me options to finish or frog the stitch, or you can park in this option. And I'm going to be doing my 10 stitches starting like bottom left to top right. That's how I'm going to be doing my stitches. So I'm going to park my thread in the lower left-hand corner. Park thread in lower left corner. So now, when I get out of that, as you zoom in, you see I have my diagonal lines now. If you want to know about parking, go to my playlist and look at my parking tutorial. I'm not going to go into really a lot of detail about the parking. I'm going to show that I park on here, but I'm not going to go into super detail about the parking because I actually did a really good tutorial about parking. I will talk about why I would park where I would park, but I don't really want to show too much of this pattern. Hang on. Only because I do not have permission to do that. And then, hang on, let me get, okay. So one thing I'm doing, since I don't really care about this right now because I'm just starting this piece, so I'm gonna hit this arrow to get rid of that. You don't need that. Let me pull this off because I'm trying to just get to this part right here. All right, I will show you this part. So when you select a color, like when I go to do my stitching, I'm gonna start probably with this stitch right here. Actually, I'm gonna start with this stitch right here and I'm going to stitch it and then I'm gonna park it over here. But it tells you up here, like whatever stitch you select, it tells you up here, the symbol, the color, it gives you kind of a mock-up of what the color looks like and how many stitches are left in it. So you don't need the list of stitches over there. All right, so I'm gonna start with the one over here. Now when I park, I try to not go more than 2 squares over. Oh, the other thing I was gonna do is all right, bear with me because I need to move you. Because how am I going to do this? I'm going to stitch like this. Okay, you can see that. All right. I wanted to make sure you could actually see. And I'm going to do a loop start. But when I park, I try to not go too far with the parking. And y'all are going to have to bear with me while I search for threads and pull colors. I don't use a shit ton of needles. I use like 1 needle. I'm not threading a bunch of needles just to do a video, and I'm not pulling 133 different colors on the chance that I might pick one of them. Like, it's not happening. Y'all are gonna have to just live with it. All right, so when I use this gridded fabric, I typically will have stitch number 1 of the square be on this gray line, and then stitch number 1 will be below the gray line above the square right here. So my stitches, once this 100 stitch block is done, my stitches will go over this gray line, and they will go over this gray line, leaving this one and this one exposed. So as long as you do however works for you, I feel like this is in here crooked, but that's okay. It doesn't matter because it's gridded fabric. Now I just lost which one I'm doing. That's okay, because I have plenty of room. We're gonna just, I don't know what square I had this in, but it doesn't matter. I'm gonna just start right here because I have plenty of room. So I'm gonna do a loop start. I don't think this was the original square that I had marked I was gonna stitch in, but you know what? Again, it doesn't matter because I had plenty of fabric. It's not like I had like a 1-inch border. And that is the only stitch in that diagonal right there. Give me 1 second. Hang on. Let me give myself a needle minder. So that's the only stitch left in this diagonal. So I'm going to jump over. I'm not the biggest fan. That's the only downside about doing 20 stitch wide diagonals, is that I'm gonna have to jump over 2 full blocks. Although if I was doing 10 stitch, I would have to end the thread. I don't want to go over, like, I'm only gonna park in the next diagonal. If the next stitch for this color was in the 3rd diagonal over, then I would end this thread. With 1 stitch, it would be difficult, but I would have seen that when I highlighted the stitches. I would have done other stitches first. But I'm gonna jump over 2 squares and I'm gonna park in the 3rd one down. So in markup mode, I'm gonna mark off my stitch and then I'm gonna double tap that one right there. And so it's gonna be 2 of the gray squares over. So 1, 2, and it's gonna be the 3rd stitch down where I park. And then I'm just gonna kind of gently kind of loop that around there to keep it out of my way. Okay, 501. Now I am gonna do something else a little bit differently with this one. One thing I had been looking up when I was kind of researching parking and whatnot, we're gonna try something a little bit differently this time, in that I'm going to be parking in the diagonal, but also I'm going to be parking in the diagonal, but I'm also going to be, or in the next diagonal, but I'm kind of going to park within the diagonal. I wanted to do a few different methods. This is why I was saying it's going to be kind of a stitch with me at the same time as a how to stitch on the diagonal. We're probably going to, I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I'm probably only going to film 1 diagonal. I probably should have made it 10 stitches wide to make it a little bit easier, but you know what? That's okay. But what I'm going to do is I've been doing a lot of kind of almost like research on, I just realized that my light is like making a shadow right up here. Sorry about that. I've been doing a lot of like watching other people's tutorials and whatnot. And one thing that they had mentioned was that they do not like putting their stitches into a, okay, I wanted to make sure. I feel like I started this square a little bit too high. Anyway, in regards to not catching my excess fabric on the back at the top. Anyway, one of the things that somebody had, like Blitz Stitch and Stitching Mommy had mentioned about, see right here, this is what I was talking about. Let me get rid of this. Was bringing your needle up. Oh man, my little trash can's over on my desk. Bringing your needle up in a hole where there are no other stitches to make your stitches look neater. And I kind of want to try that out, which means that this is going to be a little bit of a mess with the parking. But so I did that stitch right there, right? But my next stitch with that color has no stitch above it. So I'm going to park it where it goes next. If I can find the hole, get in there. This does, I will say, this does slow your stitching down. I'm not gonna lie. This does slow your stitching down when you do it this method right here. But I thought it would be fun to see if how this ends up making my stitches look. And when I'm doing projects like this, I just work out of a master set of DMC. I'll show that in another video. But I'm just working out of a master set of DMC. So all this, I don't have this project like quote unquote kitted up with its own set of floss. So I'm gonna go as long as I can. Son of a motherless goat, what's happening? I'm gonna go as long as I can on this diagonal just to kind of give you a basic idea of what this kind of entails. So I'm just running along the top line of the block, selecting the next color, and then seeing where it goes. There's no more of that color on that top line. It actually goes right next to this one right here. This is gonna be super interesting here once I start getting more stitches in. It's an experiment for us all. And let me move this down a little bit so it's not going straight across. Okay. 311. Oh, I had that one out. If there is a stitch above it, then I will stitch it. So it's not like I'm doing one stitch at a time, which you're gonna see with this right here. This one will get 2 stitches before I park it. Okay. So this one, there's a stitch here and the 4th square to the right, right? So I'm gonna do that. And then I'm gonna try to zoom in a little bit more so you can actually see what I'm doing. I just realized that it's like, my bad. How's that? This is why people usually, this is why when I did my when I did my parking tutorial, I was using a stand, but I gave my stand to my mom because I wasn't really using it. Anyway, the next stitch for this color in this little area is actually right here below the very first stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and do that one. But the next stitch has no stitch above it, and it's right next to this one. So I'm going to go ahead and park it. I'm going to go back to this first one here. sorry, my, because I'm not using a stand, I'm just holding it in my lap. It's like kind of thrown off. So I'm gonna go back to this other color right here because now there's a stitch above it. And I'm gonna go ahead and stitch this one. Oi. There we go. I'm gonna stitch this one, and the next one goes right here, but the stitch above it isn't completed, it's just parked, so I'm just gonna park it right there. Okay, moving on to 986. And I'm trying to keep my bobbins sorted with like not leaving the excess piled up or whatever. I just realized how zoomed in that was. And I don't know if you saw what I just did because I have it zoomed in so far. I might have to steal that stand back from my mother or buy another one. I got it for like $30 at Michael's. This was not the original intention of what I was going to do with this diagonal stitching. I just spur of the moment decided, hey, let me try doing this like some other people do regarding not stitching when there's no stitch above it. Okay, so this color here is going to go right here. And I am in the topmost right-hand corner, right? Okay, yeah, I am. I just wanted to make sure because it's like these colors are just like kind of odd for being a leaf. So this stitch right here is the next one. And the one below it is the same color, so I'm going to stitch that one. And the one below it. Now technically I could keep going down this entire row. I gotta zoom out. This is like too close. There we go. Technically I could keep going down this row until I hit all the colors, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna park it right here because this stitch right here right next to it is that color, but there's no stitch above it. Okay, I'm gonna kind of go into usually I would go across the top. Yeah, let's just keep going across the top row. What's this one? 310. So yeah, this method of diagonal stitching is going to be very new to me. I've never tried this before, so we're kind of figuring it out together, and we'll see how I like it. Usually when I stitch on the diagonal, I do cross country within the diagonal to a certain point. Like if, say I was on a really long diagonal, right? Say the diagonal went like from here to here and I had stitches of 310 up here, but none in this diagonal until way down here. I would either end if there was 310 in the next diagonal, I would park over here and start a new thread for the stitches down here, or I would end my thread up here and then start a new thread of 310 down here. I don't want to travel too far in the diagonal because I feel like that contributes to it looking lumpy. So 310 is the next color I'm going to use. And again, I'm staying within the diagonal. You know what? In order to show this diagonal a little bit better, I'm going to do something. I will actually switch the diagonal. I'm going to do it a 10 space wide diagonal. Yes, I'm going to do it in a 10 space wide diagonal for right now because I'm doing this stitch with me and I want to show you what a finished triangle will be like. Okay, and then I'm going to come over here, and because that's the top row, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And then I'm going to park right here because there's no stitch above that. Okay, 890. I'm going to work on that next square right there. If you've been watching me for any length of time, you know I change my method of stitching like I change underwear. Like I will probably completely change how I stitch on this thing over the next year or two. Maybe, depending. What I will change is that I will go back to 20 stitch wide diagonals once this video is done, because I do prefer the wider, but what, maybe. I don't know. I have no idea. Okay. Sorry, I know it's like kind of like that. Again, this is what happens when you don't stitch with a stand. Okay, so So these colors are just kind of going down in a line right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do these three because there's stitches above, stitches above them. Now, if I was doing full crosses, what I would probably do is go row by, and I was trying this experiment, is I would go row by row and only stitch that next stitch if there was nothing next to it or below it. But since I'm doing tent stitch, like this stitch right here in the middle, there was a stitch right here and right here, like, because there's only basically one other set of threads going into it, it's, to me, it's fine. And then this one is still in that diagonal, so I'm going to stitch this one. And this is the last color in said diagonal, so I'm going to park it for the next diagonal, which is 3 stitches. The closest one in the next diagonal is 3 stitches below it, so I'm going to park it right there. I'm still kind of playing around with this method because, again, I've never really done this method before. So I don't know 100% if what I'm doing is correct or incorrect, or if it really makes a difference. I need 470 next. Oh my God. All right, you're gonna come out too. But yeah, like this is, I mean, this really was a spur of the moment. Let me try it this way. I decided this in my head as I started this video. I haven't really worked out how exactly I would prefer to stitch on the diagonal with tent stitch completely, or just trying out this method. I may even change it up into the next diagonal. I may go row by row so that my stitches don't like intermix with each other as much as possible. So this one here, there's only 2 stitches in this diagonal with this color. One of them is right here. And the other one is over here. And then I'm going to park in the next diagonal, or yeah, I'm going to park it in the next diagonal, and I'm going to park it right there. Like I said, this does slow your stitching down a little bit, but it's fine. Okay, 832. So I will stick with the diagonal, for, at least for now, on this piece, but I think once I get this diagonal done, I think I'm gonna see how much time we're at, and I might start into the next diagonal, literally going row by row. Maybe. I don't know. Okay, so for this color, so since I switched it to 10 stitch wide diagonals, I have now hit the widest part of said diagonal. And then the next stitch will be that one there. Ah, my needle caught the needle minder on the back. Now, there is a stitch right here that's below this, but it goes into the next diagonal. So I'm just gonna park it. And then I will show you this. So I did these, damn it, markup mode, there we go. I did these 2 stitches right here. This is the stitch I was just showing you where it goes into the next diagonal, so I'm gonna park it. I stitch the line, like when I do my diagonals, the line that runs under the diagonal line right here counts as the one that I'm actively stitching on. You don't have to do it that way. You could do it the one before, but it just makes sense to me to have it like that. Okay, 3371. Where are you? You're over here. So we'll get this 10 stitch diagonal done. Because really it's just how to start a project on the diagonal. And it's literally the same method if you're doing full cross. The different ways that you can stitch on the diagonal would be like what I'm doing right now. You could go, you could do it where you don't make the stitch above, or you don't make the stitch if there's not any stitching above it. You could also go row by row and literally like only park, like only stitch the very top row and then park it until you, even if it's below, you know, even if it's below, like you could do the entire top row and just like, you know, park, and then do the next row, park, you know, so you could do it that way. You could also, hang on. You could also do cross country within the diagonal where, make sure I parked in the right spot. Yeah. You could also do cross country in the diagonal, and if you don't care if your stitches are stitched with no stitch above them or whatever, and you could just fill out the entire color no matter where it is, because that may start to happen as these diagonals get bigger. You can why? Hang on a second. What's this color? 470. Oh, maybe I was going to do that one. I got very confused for a second because I remembered pulling out this color right here. God, that's a long length. I remembered pulling this color out here, and I thought I had made a stitch with this color already, but I did not. So you just have to, and you may have to try a few different methods to find what really works for you. Like a few of my full coverage pieces that I am doing in the upper left hand corner, and actually even Honeymoon Sunset, all my other pieces that I am stitching on the diagonal, I am doing cross country within the diagonal. I am not doing it this method. It is a little tedious. Kind of liking it. Kind of makes me be more attentive to my stitching, more aware of it, I guess you could say. And I'm actually going to park over here. 3. So I just have a few stitches left in this smaller diagonal. Hi, Gracie. Hey, girl. Hi. There she goes. Here we go. Had to thread my needles, having some problems. So that's the only stitch in that one. And then we're gonna come over to this square, and let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4 over from the corner. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, you know what I can do? I can, from that Y, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 over. So I think I might try this method out for a bit here and see if I like it. And if not, then I'll just go back to cross country within the diagonal. It's no big deal. You're not committed to one particular method of stitching. I mean, hell, I've seen people convert from 2 threads 10 stitch to 1 over 1 full cross without any problems whatsoever. Oh, you know what I should have done? I should have done the other color first, because now I'm going to stitch into a parked thread. Blast. Okay, let me do this one. So there's this one, and then, yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool, but this constant threading and unthreading to do like one single stitch, not really sure exactly how I feel about it. Like I said, it's still a method that I'm trying to learn. You know what? I don't think it would bother me if I wasn't filming, because threading and unthreading needles, it doesn't bother me. And it's only bugging me right now because I'm trying to stitch a little bit faster for you guys. So what I like about diagonal stitching is I like how the piece comes together. As each diagonal gets completed, it's really neat. You get to, like, you have a set method of how the pattern comes along, right? And you get to get into the fun stuff faster that way, because as each diagonal gets completed, they're going to get longer and longer as you stitch on the pieces, but they'll get longer and longer as you stitch on the pieces, and then once you get about halfway across the piece, they're going to start getting shorter, but you get into the fun stuff pretty quick, I feel. Okay, what's this color right here? 3051. Yeah, we'll just use a short length. Oh, because you know what? Yeah, we're going to use a short length because there's no stitching in this diagonal here. And the next one, there's like one stitch of this color and then there's nothing in the next diagonal. So we're going to stitch this and I'll just end the thread. There we go. Trying to thread my needle off camera. And there are ways that you can end your thread from the front. Sometimes what I'll do with if I want to end from the front is I will go down to a very obvious, this is not where I'm stitching spot. Like this is not where I would normally park spot, off to the side. And then I will go like obviously like this. Obviously when I come across that, that's obviously not a stitch, right? And I don't mind doing this. Normally what I do is I will end on the back. I'll just tuck it under. Tuck it under threads. But I don't feel like flipping my work over right now. So I'll just bring it down, right? Do an extra long stitch like that and then just come up and clip it. And then as this gets further, as these diagonals get further along, the thread that's running on the back is going to get stitched over, and then as you get closer to this area, I can just pull this up and clip it really close to the fabric, and then the tiny little tail will end up getting pulled out, and it's fine. And it all works out, and the back of your thread gets secured down from stitching over it like that. Okay, 307. Bear with me, y'all. We're almost done. Okay. So it's just that one stitch there, and then I'm going to park over here. Okay. And go ahead and get this stitch, this one black stitch completed that I was waiting, because there was no stitch above it. Ah, there we go. And then I'm going to park it in the top row of the next diagonal. I'm going to do that to myself again. Let me do it like this. There we go. Okay. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go into the next diagonal, and I'm going to show you what I do when I get into the next diagonal with the park threads. My dry ass hands are catching the thread. I'm going to show you what I do. I'll go ahead and start stitching on the next diagonal, and I'm going to show you what I do if I stitch a diagonal how I normally would, which is cross country in the diagonal. And I'll show you how I go into a diagonal, because this one here is really just, this is how you start a piece, having to start 5,000 million threads, because all these colors are new, right? And I'm about to make myself look like a liar, because usually I don't park more than one diagonal over. However, I just pulled off an entire length of 782 for one single stitch. And the next stitch for it is 2 diagonals over. I'm going to park over in that diagonal. So it's not gonna, God dog it. See, this is why I had this is why I had this thing right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and park 2 diagonals over, because I do not want to end the thread with all this length left if I don't have to. Like, I could, but I don't have to. And it's only in this square over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. Okay. 991. We're almost done with this square, y'all. I think I have like 2 colors left in it. This one here that I'm about to pull, and then the one that's still parked in there. And then we're going to go to the diagonal number 2, and I will show you how I do a diagonal with when there's already parked threads in it. Okay, so this one has, like, I like the whole idea of coming up in a hole where there's no stitches already. I don't know. I might like it more if I was stitching by myself, but I'm not. I'm stitching with you guys. So I feel like it's like slowing me way, way down, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. Okay. Oh, I lied, there's 3 colors, because there's 1 single stitch, not of this one, but of the next color. Okay. But we are almost done with, because I feel like the cross-country diagonal stitching, I feel like is a little bit less of a waste of thread, especially now that I'm looking at where this color goes in the next diagonal. So, but yeah, I kind of forgot. I kind of almost forgot how much I enjoy diagonal stitching. It does make for a fun appearance as it progresses along. And it looks really neat too. 1, 2, 3, 4. But yeah, so I might end up converting my pieces all to diagonal, except for my Haid cell. I'll just leave that cross country. But I might convert my pieces to diagonal. So I at least until I change my mind again. Okay, so I'm just gonna park right here, right next to that, because that color goes into there. Okay. This is the final stitch for the diagonal number 1. Right there. And I'm going to park it right here to go into the next one. So there's my first diagonal right there, right? So diagonal number 2, and we were at 56 minutes, so I'm going to show you part of this. Sorry, I know it's kind of going all over the place. I'm not used to stitching like this, filming like this either. So what I'm going to do is, in my next diagonal, I'm going to stitch cross country in said diagonal. And what I will typically do is, like the color that I just parked, okay, there's 1 stitch way up here, 2 stitches right here, this one where it's parked, and then all these down here, and the color continues over here. Well, up here, the color also continues over here. So this is where I think I've mentioned before that I'll have like multiple colors of, or multiple threads of the same color. I'm okay with that because I'm going to do this stitch and I'm going to do these 2 up here with this parked thread, and I'm going to come down here and do these and park here. When I get up here, I'm going to start a new thread of this color and park over and do that stitch and then park here, and if they end up intertwining, which sometimes they do, then I will just pick one of them and end it, or park it in the next one over. But for right now, no, I'm going to go ahead and do that one because it's further out. So when I go into a section that I'm going to stitch that has parked threads, I will typically move all my threads over like I just did, and pick the one that is furthest away. Oh my God. I will pick the one that is furthest away from the stitched area. And typically with something like this, the one that's furthest away and lowest down, which would be this one right here. And we're going to do what I normally will do, which is cross country in the diagonal, so I'm not worried about stitching where there's no stitches above it. Okay, let me see. Hang on, I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I feel that doing it like this right here does make it go a little bit faster for me. So, yeah. I might stick with this method. And this goes into the next diagonal, this one right here. So I'm going to park right there. These three right here, this is why I don't like parking more than this right here is why I don't really care to park in a diagonal that I'm not actively stitching in, because those three strands right there, those go in the other into the next one, and it's like starting to throw me off already. Okay. So, yeah, I feel like this is going a lot faster now. I'm excited to see this piece come along. Wonder how many stitches I'll be able to do on it before I have to put it away. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. All right, let me do this bottom one. I don't really know what else to say right now. I'm just kind of filling in this color here, like no particular rhyme or reason. Because it actually fills in a good portion of this section. And I don't really have a whole lot to say. I know regarding diagonal tutorials, Blitz Stitch put 2 of them out. One was 5 years ago, one was 7 years ago. That's really how I learned about diagonal stitching, with parking too, really. And I think that his explanation was very good. He's pretty thorough with how he explains his stuff. But I mean, this is all there is to it about stitching on the diagonal. Now, if you were doing this on paper, then you could totally do it. You just need to get a highlighter, get your paper pattern, get a highlighter, and highlight. I wouldn't suggest a pen or a pencil, because you're going to get confused about what, just split that thread. You're going to get confused about what the symbol is underneath the ink. So I would suggest a highlighter, and you just dot, which he explains in his video, because he shows you on a piece of paper. But you just highlight what stitches, or you highlight your diagonal mark with your highlighter. And I would suggest a different color than what you would highlight your stitches with. If you normally highlight with a yellow, You may want to think about marking your stitches, your diagonal, with like a pink or something. So you could absolutely do this on a paper pattern if you choose to. I want to say that he does almost all of his pieces on the diagonal, as long as it makes sense. I think he used to do all of his stuff on a diagonal, and then he was like, you know, some of this stuff just doesn't make sense to do it diagonally. You just do whatever works for you. If you try this out and you don't like it, you know, the lovely thing about this is that if you're like, you know what, this doesn't really work for me, you can very easily switch to your preferred method of stitching, or you could switch to a different method and try it out that way. Like I did. I was like, oh, I'm not going to stitch with, if there's no stitch above it, and I tried it for that one diagonal. I'm like, you know, this is very slow, and I don't know if I really like that very much, so we are going to go back to what I prefer to do with when I do diagonal stitching, which is cross country within the diagonal. And it is definitely going much faster. And I feel like I don't really have much to say. But what I will do is I will work in, I'm probably going to end the video here in a minute after I finish what I have to say right now. I will work in these parked threads that's in the diagonal. I will work in the parked threads and make sure I'm, yeah. And then after I work those parked threads in that diagonal, I will then pull the colors that currently have no parked threads in them. Like the random, you know, to the fill-in colors, and I will stitch those and then park those where they need to, or in the thread where it needs to be ended. And then move on to the next diagonal. Yeah, because we're like over an hour already. Oh, you know what I'll do? I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to finish out these parked threads, and then I will come back once I'm on like the last like color of the last like one or two colors of the piece of the ones that have to be filled in. Yeah, I'll do that. I'm going to pause the video, and when I come back, most of this diagonal will be filled in. There's only going to be like one or two colors left to fill in. So we'll do that. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so as you can see, I have all my parked threads from this second diagonal worked in, and now I'm going to start filling in the and I ended my second thread right there. But now I'm going to start filling in the threads remaining for this diagonal, if I can figure out my life. I feel like this is, I may stick with this cross country in the diagonal as opposed to the first way that I did with the first one. I feel like this is a little bit faster for me. I prefer it. Yay, there we go. 470. which I've already done one color, one strand of. I actually have 470 parked down here, but because it was so far down, I didn't want to travel that far with it. Like, because it was so far down and there was a bunch of stitches that weren't being stitched. Like, if it was spread throughout the entire piece, that's one thing. Throughout the entire diagonal, that's one thing. But there was only a few stitches down here and a few stitches up here, and I didn't want to like travel all the way up, because I think that may have contributed to some of the bulkiness from when I was doing 10 stitch diagonal on previous pieces. So if I have to travel too far with it, I will make exceptions to that rule. Like, for example, say there was a bunch of stitches in the top of this diagonal here, and there was literally one stitch of that color at the bottom of the diagonal, as long as it wasn't like too long. Like if I got over here, right, and the diagonal goes from like here all the way down to here, I'm not going to travel from here to here like that. Like, I'm trying to do it like where I'm not going to travel that far, but like this, something like this right here, I would probably go ahead and travel down to do that one stitch, especially if there was no other stitches of that color near that single stitch. As long as you don't do that too many times, it shouldn't end up too terribly bulky for you. Okay. We just have a few colors left. Actually, this next color is a little bit of an example of what I was just talking about. Like, it's not going to be traveling too far because it's really just going from one square up to the next square, like regarding the 10 by 10 squares. But when you look at the diagonal as an individual, it is traveling a bit further than what I would normally want to travel. But since there's like, you know, the one stitch down here, like, it just makes more sense to do it this way. Okay, so for this color, and actually now that I'm looking at this, I'm gonna go the opposite direction of what I originally planned. I'm actually gonna start up here and do this one here. And then jump over here and do these two. I was originally intending on starting at the bottom and getting this one right here and then going up, but I realized that if I did that and ended up at the top, I wouldn't need to park my thread, but I can actually park it down here. Actually, I'm going to park it up here. There we go. Okay. This one's going to be kind of short for a parked thread, like shorter than what I would normally want to do for a parked thread. However, it's this stitch, this one single stitch in this diagonal, and then one single stitch in the next diagonal. So I'm going to go ahead and just use this really short one. That way when I do the stitch in the next diagonal, I can just end the thread. It's like one stitch right there. And then there's another one right there. So when I go into this diagonal and I stitch that one, I'll just end the thread. Okay. Just a few more stitches and we're gonna be done. $8.98. One stitch of $8.98. How wonderful. And I have to pull an entire length just to do it. An extra long length, holy shit. Okay, so you'll get to see me end a thread again because it's literally one stitch of this color right over here. Bear with me, I had a knot in that thread right there while I was trying to wrap it back up. Okay. All right, let's do this one single stitch of this color. Then I'm going to come down here. That's it. There's no other colors. I'm going to come down here, come up, go down, come up again a little bit of ways. Ah! Whew! Almost lost my needle there. I just bumped the shit out of you guys. I'm so sorry. Earthquake! All right. All right, this is the last color right here. 906. And you'll see me end this one too, because it's just this one strip right here. I really hope that I don't make you guys seasick. But you know, it's like I'm working with what I got. I'm doing the best I can. Before I get any bad comments about the way that this is filmed, if you can do a better job, please do so. Post your video and tag me in it so I can watch, because I would love to see it. Although I have noticed that the people who make nasty comments about other people's, I've been very blessed. I've not had hardly any mean comments on my videos, right? But the people who I have noticed who leave mean comments on other floss tubers videos that I've watched, they don't have any videos at all. So it's like, you know what? If you're going to sit there and talk shit about how somebody's doing their videos, go make your own damn videos. Don't be such a negative Nelly and be such an expert on it when you have not put out one single video yourself. That's all I'm going to say about that for right now. I feel like I'm missing a stitch. Oh, I am missing a stitch. This one right here. That's okay, I'll take care of it in a little bit because I'm going to keep stitching, but I want to end this video. Okay, so that's what I have to show you. And that's the basics of parking on a diagonal. And yeah, I enjoy it. I'll probably go back to it. I'm just double checking where I parked this one thread in particular. I think that might be parked in the wrong spot. Hang on. $9.91. Yeah. See, you still make mistakes with parking. Oh, you know what I did? I marked the park in the wrong spot. That's what I did. No, but it's still in the... Anyway, that's the diagonal with parking. I'm going to keep going with it like this method right here for now until I decide otherwise. I'm not noticing any bulk, which is what made me stop doing it on my other pieces to begin with. I don't see any lines just yet, so I have hopes that maybe my little trick of doing it right to left, if my stitches are going left to right, maybe that will counterbalance the line issue that I've noticed in the past. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comment section down below, and hit the bell to be notified whenever I post a new video. Hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed and you like what you had to see. Otherwise, take care, happy stitching, get a lot of stitches in, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.